Hello everyone, welcome to the Mercury Virtual. Hope you are doing good. Today I am going to continue with your same module, that is the database design concepts, and the chapter number 5, that is the new chapter, that is the advanced SQL. In the last class we have finished with the chapter number 4, that is the intermediate SQL, that is a what is a intermediate SQL and how the intermediate SQL works with the different condition, different scenarios. Now let's start with the previous class session, or let's start with the previous class scenario, previous class topic, and then move to the chapter number 5, that is advanced SQL. That is, what is the advanced SQL, how to use the advanced SQL, what are the various commands that is used in the advanced SQL. So first part is SQL data types and the schemas. That is a there is a SQL data type and the schema that is also available. That is the first topic that we have covered. So let's start with the previous class topic. So we have finished the chapter number 4 in the last class, and there are different topics that we have discussed in the last class. So let's start with them. So first of all, we have discussed about the SQL data types and the schema. That is, what are the various SQL data types and what are the various schemas that is available. Or we can say the logical designs that is available in the SQL. So first is SQL data type. So that is the date and the time types in SQL. So in addition to the basic data types we introduce, the SQL standard supports several data types that is related to the or that is relating to time and the date. So there are various we can say the several data type that is related or that is relating to the date and the time that is available. So first is the date. That is what is the date? That contains a 4-digit year, month and day of a month. Then the time, that is the time, that is a variable that is used with a timestamp. That is a timestamp. That is the next part, that is a combination of the date and the time. Then what are the various default values that is given? So by default it is value, or its value is given to the 0. So by default, if I am not assigning any value, the value that will be assigned will be the null value, that is a 0 value. As a result, when a tuple is inserted into a student relation, if no value is provided to the total credit attribute, its value is set to be 0. Now this is the statement, or this is the we can say the statement that illustrates how the insertion can be done uh, uh, for the value that is available for the total credit attribute. So this is insert into student ID, name, department name. What are the values that is given? ID is 12789, the name is Newman, and the department name is computer science. Then we have also discussed about the index creation, that is how to create the index, how we are maintaining the reference, that is the index creation. That is a very major portion of the records of the file. For example, if I am talking about a salary query like this one, find all the instructors in the physics department. So we are providing, or we are just focusing on the attribute. We are just focusing on the index that is used, that is data structure that allows the database system to find those tuples in the relation that have a specified value for that attribute efficiently. And how to create an index, that we have studied, that is this is the syntax that is used, that is a create index student ID index on the student ID. So this creates the index student ID on the attribute ID of the relation student. So this is the attribute, this is the relation, that is the table name, this is the index that is maintained. Then we have discussed how to maintain, or how to we can say the create the large blob or large object types. So there are two commands that is used. One is the blob, that is a binary data. One is the glob, that is the character data. So there are two large objects that is used. One is the character data and one is the binary data. This is the example, that is a book review. First of all, there is a globe, then there is an image, there is a blob, and the movie, there is a blob. Then there are some other data types also, that is a user defined types. So SQL also provide two forms of user defined data types. First one, that is a distinct types, the other form, that is a structured data types. So the first data type that is available is a distinct type of the user defined types, and then next is the structured data types of the user defined data types. So it is possible for several attributes to have the same data type. For example, the name attribute for a student name and the instructor might have a same domain, that is set of the all the person that is available. And the create type clause is available for define the new data type, that is how to create the new data type that is available. And SQL also provide the drop type and the alter type clause to drop or modify the type that we have already created. And these are the various terms that we have talked about the domain, that is how to create the domain and what are the various rules regulation that we follow for the domain. So first of all, the domain value have a constraint, have a, we can say the condition that their value cannot be a null. So they have a constraints such that the not null can be specified on them. It can have a default values that is defined for the variables of the domain type, whereas the user defined types cannot have a constraint or the default value that is specified on them. Then the next point that we have studied about the domain, that they are not strongly typed. This is create domain, then yearly salary, then numeric 82, then constraint. What is the constraint? That is salary value test. That is checking the salary value, that is check, that is value is greater than 29,000. Next, that is a create table extension. That is how to use the create table extension, or what are the various terms that is used for the create table extension. The applications often require creation of the table that have a same schema as an existing table. SQL provides a create table like extension to support the task. So this is the create table, temp instructor, like instructor. Then we also discuss about the schemas, catalogs and the environments. So what is the schema? That is a logical design. What is a catalog? That is a hierarchy of the various design that is available in the schema. So in order to perform any action on a database, a user must connect to the or must first connect to the database. The user must provide the username and usually a password for verifying the identity of the user. Each user has a default catalog and the schema, and combination is unique to the user. So to identifying a relation, we uniquely identify three part main or three main part that can be used. That is a catalog 5 university schema course. And the default catalog and the schema are a part of the SQL or SQL environment that is a setup for each connection. So you have to define the schema, we have to drop the schema. Then we have discussed about the topic that is authorization. That means to find out whether the person or whether any form that is authorized or not. So to identify whether the form is authorized or not, that is the authorization. So we may assign a user with several form of authorizations on parts of the database. That is, there are multiple parts of the database or there are multiple parts of the authorization on the database. What are the various parts of the authorization? That is authorization to the read value, then authorization to insert new data, then authorization to update data, then authorization to delete data. That is how to read the data, how to insert the new data, then how to update data and how to delete the data. And every authorization has some types that is known as a privilege. So if anyone have a privilege, that means authorization is available to him or her. So these are the various authorization part, that is reading the data, inserting the data, updating and the deleting the data. Then we have discussed what is a supervisor, who is the database administrator that is operating the database, that is has a full authorization to operate the database. Then first one is granting and revoking of privileges, that is how to grant and how to revoke the privileges. So SQL standard includes the privileges like select, insert, update, delete. The privilege, all privilege can be used as a short form for the allowing privileges. A user who creates a new relation is given all privilege on that relation automatically. So this is a grant, that is a privilege on relation name or the view name to the user or the role list. The privilege list allows the granting of several privileges in one command. The select authorization on a relation is required to read the tuples in the relation. So what is the command that is used? That is a grant select on department to the Amit and the Santoshi. Then what is the use of the insert authorization? That means that this provides, or this authorization provides or allows a user to insert the tuples into the relation, that is the insert authorization. And the delete authorization, that allows a user to delete the tuples from the relation. So if I have an authorization, if I have a privilege, I can delete the data, I can insert the data and I can update the data. And to revoke an authorization, we must use the, we use the revoke statement. That means taking back authorization or taking back everything from the user, that is a revoking. So what is the syntax that is used? That is a revoke privilege name, a name on the relation from the user or the role list. Now what is a role? That is a, what is a role list? That is a group, or we can say the physical quantities, that is a person, place, or the group that is playing any role, that is a role list. So how to create the role? That is a create role instructor, and roles can be granted privilege just as the user can. So this is a grant select on takes to the instructors. Roles can be granted to the users as well as to the other roles that is given. Therefore, the privilege of a user or a role that consists of all the privileges that is directly granted to the user, all the privileges that is granted to the roles that have been granted to the user or role. Note that there could be a chain of roles. For example, the teaching assistant or may be granted to all the instructors. Then we will discuss how to make the authorization or how to apply the authorization on the various views. So authorization on the views, that is how to apply the authorization on various. So this is create view, geo instructor as select star from the instructor where department name is equal to geology. And then the update authorization is also required, that is used to update the information, update the relation, and to define the view. Then authorization on the schema, that is how to apply the authorization on the schema, that is what is the authorization and how to give the authorization on various schemas. However, SQL includes a reference privilege that permits the user to declare the foreign keys when creating the relations, and the SQL reference privilege is granting on the specific attributes in a manner like that for the update privilege. So same privileges that is available, that is a reference variable that is available. This is grant references, then department name on the department to the Marino. So grant the references on the department name on the department to the Marino. Then how to transfer the privileges? That is a grant select on the department to Amit with the grant option. This is how to transfer the privilege from one person to another person. So this is a syntax that is used to grant the or to transfer the privileges. Then revoking of privileges, that is how to revoke the privileges, that is the revoking of the privileges. That is how to take back the privileges that is available. This is revoke, then select on department from the Amit Satoshi restrict. That is the revoking the privilege. Then we are talking about the, or we are talking about the summary, that is what we have covered in this chapter. Then there are various question answers that is available. That is a practice question that is available for this chapter. Now let's move to the next topic, next chapter, that is chapter number 5, that is advanced SQL, that is a today's topic. So let's start with the chapter number 5, that is the advanced SQL. So in chapter number 3 and 4, we studied about the basic introduction of the SQL and the intermediate SQL. That is how to use the basic SQL, that is just an introductory SQL, and how to use the intermediate SQL, that is some forms, some rules, some transactions, or we can say that some commands of the SQL. Now next is chapter number 5 is advanced SQL, that is the advanced part of the SQL. So in chapter number 3 and 4 we provided detailed coverage of the basic structure of the SQL. In this chapter we cover some of the more advanced features of the SQL, that is what are the various advanced features of the SQL. We address the issue of how to access the SQL from a general purpose programming language, which is very important for the building application that use a database to store and retrieve the data. So what is an SQL? That is a general purpose programming language that is very important for the building blocks or for the building applications that we use that we use for the database to use the programming languages, or for building the application that use a database to store and retrieve the data. We describe how procedural code can be executed within the database, that is how to provide the or how to use the procedural code or how to execute the code by using the database, either by extending the SQL language or by supporting the procedural actions. We discuss recursive queries and the advanced aggregation feature that is supported by the SQL. Finally, we describe online and analytical processing, that is the OLAP system that support the interactive analysis of the large subset. So in this chapter we studied about the OLAP, that is what is OLAP and how the OLAP will be used, or what is the main advantage of using the OLAPs. So let's start with the first topic, that is 5.1, that is the accessing SQL from a programming language. That is how to access the or how to access the we can say the SQL from a programming language, how to use the SQL with the programming language. So let's start. So in simple terms, there are two languages that is available. One is the SQL in this topic. One is the SQL, one is a programming language. So how to use the SQL with the programming language, or how to relate the SQL with the programming language, or how to access the SQL from a programming language. That is how to connect the database with the programming language. In simple terms, we have to write the program in the C, C++, that is the any programming language, C, C++, Java, and how to access or how to connect the database, that is the SQL, or how to take the database, that is SQL, from a programming language. So SQL provides a powerful declarative query language. Writing queries in SQL is usually much easier than coding the same queries in a general purpose programming. So if I'm using the general purpose programming, that have the same queries or much easier coding as compared to the general purpose programming. So SQL has a we can say the easy understanding, easy capability to handle the instructions, to handle the capabilities than that of the general purpose programming languages. However, a database programmer must have access to a general purpose programming language for at least two reasons. That is, a database programmer must have access or must use the general purpose programming language for at least these two reasons. What are the two reasons why programmers uses the general purpose programming? First one, not all queries can be expressed in the SQL. So not every query can be expressed, or not every query can be solved with the use of the SQL, since SQL does not provide the full expressive power of a general purpose programming. Because there is no capability, there is no, we can say, the extension that is available for the general purpose programming to use. So there is no extensive or full extensive power that is available for the general purpose programming or general purpose language. That is, there exist queries that can be expressed in a language such as C, Java, or COBOL that cannot be expressed in the SQL. To write such query, we embed the SQL with a more powerful language, that is the C, C++, Java, any programming language that is available. So first point says, not every query is solved by the SQL, not every query is solved by the general purpose programming. So we have to mix, or we have to manage the general purpose programming with the we can say the this one, that is general purpose programming language with the SQL. Now next is non-declarative actions such as printing a report, interacting with the user, or sending the results of a query to the graphical user interface cannot be done from within the SQL. So suppose if I want to print a report, if I want to interact with the user, if I want to send the result of a query to a graphical user interface, that cannot be done within the SQL. So we have to use the programming language like C, C++, Java, COBOL. So that is a non-declarative actions. Applications usually have several components and queries, or updating the data is not only one component or other component that is written in a programming language. So we have to use the SQL as well as the programming language because of the n number of reasons, because there is compatibility that the user defined, that is a very useful for printing a report, interacting with the user, sending the results, and there are so many reasons that is available. Now what are the various approaches to access the SQL from the general purpose programming? So how we are using, or how the general purpose programming is we used with the SQL, that is how to connect the SQL with the general purpose programming. So first is the two approaches that is available. So first is the dynamic SQL. So we are using the dynamic SQL for using or for accessing the SQL from a general purpose programming. So one is the dynamic SQL. So a general purpose program can be can connect to and communicate with the database server using collection of functions. So there are so many functions that is available that is used to connect the general purpose programming with the SQL. Dynamic SQL allows a program to construct an SQL query as a character string at the runtime. So it is also possible to generate the SQL query at the runtime and submit the query and then retrieve the result into the program uh, at a tuple or as a tuple at a time. The dynamic SQL component of SQL allows programs to construct and submit the SQL queries at the runtime. So dynamic movement or the dynamic SQL also allows the programs or the we can say the C++ program to construct and submit the SQL queries at the runtime. So dynamic means that is available at the runtime when the program is running. In this chapter, we look at the two standards for connecting the SQL. One is the JDBC, that is the Java database connectivity. One is the ODBC, that is the object database connectivity. That is the application program that is designed for the C language, ODBC, and the JDBC is defined for the Java language. And both are part of the dynamic SQL. That is a user can define the dynamic SQL, user can change the dynamic SQL, we can connect the programming language with the SQL at the runtime. So everything is available at the runtime. That is the dynamic SQL. Next, embedded SQL. Like dynamic SQL, embedded SQL also provides a means by which a program can interact with a database server. That is a connection with the database server, or we can provide a means that is how to connect or how to interact the program with the database server. That is the embedded SQL. That is embedding the program, embedding the SQL server. However, under embedded SQL, the SQL statements are identified at a compile time using a preprocessor. The preprocessor submits the SQL statement to the database system for pre-compilation and optimization, then replaces the SQL statement in the application program with application code or with appropriate code and the function calls before invoking the programming language compiler. So embedded means embed the SQL language within the C language, not linking, but embed the code, as we said, embed the code of the SQL statement in the C language during the pre-compilation or during the pre-compile period and the optimization. A major challenge in mixing the SQL with the general programming language is the mismatch in the ways these languages manipulate data. So what is the main criteria, or what is the main challenge that is facing while merging the or while connecting the SQL and the programming language? What is a mismatch? What is the main challenge that is available? That is these language or manipulate the data. That is there are different ways to manipulate the data of the SQL. There is a different method to manipulate the data of the programming languages. But both are the different languages. One is the programming language, one is the SQL language. In SQL, the primary type of data is the relation. So what is the primary type that is available for the data? That is a relation, that is a table. SQL statements operates on the relations and return relations as a result. So whatever the SQL statement that is available, that is operates on the relation, that is operates on the tables and return the tables as a result. Programming languages normally operate on a variable at a time, and those variables correspond roughly to the value of an attribute in a tuple. So whatever the value that is available as an attribute and in a tuple in relation. So in SQL, that is available or that operates on the relation and also returns the relation as a result. So this so one is a SQL that operates on the, we can say, the relations, that is a table, but the programming language that works on the or that operates on the variable at a time. Therefore, integrating these two types of languages into a single application requires a mechanism to return the result of a query in a manner that the program can handle. So how to return the result of a query, or how to use the result of a query that is available in a manner that the program can handle. So that's the main challenge, that is how to interact or how to make the compatibility or how to make the matching between the general purpose programming and the SQL programming. Now first is JDBC. So let's start with the two concepts or two connectivities. One is the JDBC and one is the ODBC. So JDBC stands for, or can be defined as an its full form is Java Database Connectivity, and it is defined as an API, that is the application program interface, that the Java programs can use to connect to the database server. As I said, whenever a Java programs needs to connect to the database server, that is provided by the JDBC. The JDBC was originally as an abbreviation of Java Database Connectivity, but the full form is no longer used. So this is the program that is used. So next line saying that database was only, but the full form is no longer used. So figure 5.1 shows an example of Java program that uses the JDBC interface or JDBC connection. It illustrates or it provides information about how connections are opened and how statements are executed and the result process. So how the connections are opened, how the statements are executed, and how the results are processed, and how the connections are closed. So one is the connections are opened, statements are executed, results are processed, and the connections are closed. In this example in detail, we will discuss this example in detail in this section. The Java program must import java.sql whenever it is using the Java into their system, which contains the interface definition for the functionality that is provided by the JDBC, that is Java Database Connectivity. Now, how to connect to a database? So first of all, this is the, we can say the example. This start with the public static void JDBC example. There is a string user ID and the string password. There is a try block. What is a try? That is available, the name, and the, we can say the connection. This is the connection that is available. This is how to make that, or how to connect that Java database or Java programming to the database server. This is the line that starts with the creation. So whenever I want to start any connection, that is started by the, or that is controlled by the O1. So class, right. So this is connection con equals to driver manager dot get connection, and JDBC Oracle thin, then DB Yale edu 1521 UniVBA password and the username. So this is the, we can say the connection or connectivity method, how to connect the Java with the connectivity of the database. Now first part is connecting to the database, that is how to connect to the database, or how Java language is connecting to the database. So the first step in accessing a database from a Java program is to open a connection to the database. That is how to open the connection, or what is the main target for opening a connection. That is the main step or the first step that is available in accessing a database from the Java program. To open a connection to the database, this step is required to select which database to use, for example an instance of the Oracle running on your machine, or a Postgres SQL, that is database connecting, or running on other machine. After operating a connection, a Java program can execute SQL statement. So we have to define, or we have to access the database, that is open connection, that requires this topic is used to select which database to use, that is for example of Oracle, for example of Postgres SQL. Only after opening a connection can Java execute statement. A connection is opened using the getConnection method of the driver manager class within the Java SQL. This method takes three parameters. So what is the connection line that is available? That is a driver manager class. So first parameter that is used, that is the getConnection, or that calls a string that specifies the URL or the machine name where the server runs. For example, in our example, this is the db whale edu. This is a string that specifies the URL or the name of the machine where the server runs, along with possibly some other information such as the protocol that is used in the database. The port number, the database system used for communication, specific database server that is used. Note that this JDBC specify only the API, not the communication protocol, that is the application programming interface. A JDBC server or this JDBC driver may support multiple protocols, and we must specify one supported by both the database and the driver. So we must also use the protocol that is also used in the we can say the also used as a connection to make the connection, or how to connect the database with the Java language. The protocols are vendor specific, so it depends on the person to person, vendor to vendor, which protocol should be used. So this is the first parameter that is used with the, we can say the connection, that is how to maintain the connection, that is the get connection method, that is start with the driver manager class. Now the sec parameter, or the second part, that is the second parameter to the get connection, is a database user identifier, that is a string. So this is the first parameter, that is a get connection call. The next is the user identifier. So one is the URL, next is the user identifier. That parameter is a password. So one is the, we can say the URL, next is the user interface, that is the database user interface, last one is your string that is also available, so that is a password. So that is also of the string type. Note that the need for to specify a password within the JDBC code presents a security risk if an unauthorized person accesses your Java code. So these are the three parameters. First parameter we can say the URL, second parameter we can say the string, third parameter that is also a string, but we have to specify the password within the database connectivity. In our example in the figure, we have created a connection object whose handle is cone. So let's see. This is we have created, that is this one. This is the cone that is available, that is CONN, that is the connection is maintained with the cone. That is the connection parameter. Each database product that supports the JDBC, that is all major database vendors do, provides a JDBC driver. So every database that is connected with the JDBC provides a JDBC driver, so that they can dynamically allocate it, or they are using the dynamic moment that is loaded into order to access the database from the Java. So when we use the Java drivers, it is very easy to reload the data or dynamically load the data in order to access the database from the Java. In fact, loading the driver must be done first before connecting to the database. So this line must become earlier than the next line, that is how to we can say the connect the database, how to load the driver, that must be done first before connecting to the database. This is done by invoking the class.forName with one argument that specifies or that specifying a concrete class implementing the java.sql.driver interface. So whatever the we can say the class, or whatever the we can say the portion, that is done by invoking the two functions with the argument, that is the class.forName and the java.sql driver interface. That is the first time of program in figure 5.1. This interface provides the translation of the product independent JDBC calls into the program specific call that is needed by the specific database management system be used. The example that is used in this figure shows the Oracle driver, Oracle.jdbc, Oracle uh, driver, and the Oracle JDBC driver. The driver that is available in the a.jar at vendor side and should be placed from the class part so that the Java compiler can access. So in simple terms, there is a database connectivity that is also maintained by the database, or we can say the Java database connectivity. And what are the protocol that is used? That is the JDBC Oracle thin. The suitable protocol is also used for the Java database connectivity that are used to exchange the information with the database. Depends on the driver that is used. It is mostly depend on the driver which protocol will be used, because they are compatible with each other. So if someone stops, then another have to be stopped. Now the next part is shipping the SQL statements to the database system. That is how to ship the or how to ship, or how to we can say the transfer, or the we can say the movement of the SQL statement to the database systems. So once the database connection is open, the program can use it to send the multiple or send the SQL statement to the database system for execution. So once the connection is maintained, the next step is getting the information or send the SQL statements to the database system for this execution. This is done via an instance of the class statement. So what is the statement? That is available, that is a database, or that is a SQL statement, that is the instance of the class. A statement object is not the SQL statement itself. So whatever the SQL or whatever the statement object that is we are taking, that is not the SQL statement itself, but rather an object that allows a Java program to invoke the functions. That is the next part. Our example creates a statement handle, that is the stmt on the connection call. So our example that is available, that is a statement handle or handle. Now to execute a statement, we must invoke the execute query method or the execute update method depending on the SQL query that is used. So it depends on the SQL query. We can either use the update method, we can also use the execute query method. So either we can use the execute update, or either we can use the execute query. In our example, STMT execute update executes an update statement that inserts into the instructor relation, that is how to update or how to execute the update relation. So it returns an integer that giving the number of tuples inserted, updated or deleted. So for DDL statement the return value is 0. So whenever we use the data definition languages, the return value that is available is the 0. Now next is how to retrieve the result of a query, that is retrieving the result of an query. The example program that executes by using the stmt.execute query, it retrieves a set of couples in the result into a result set object reset and fetches them a tuple, or that fetches them one tuple at a time. So what is the main example? That program that submits a query, that executes a query by asking or by using the statement, by using the word. So what is the word that is used? That is the, we can say the result or the tuples can be used within the SQL statements. And the SQL and the statements and the connections are both closed at the end of the Java program. So whatever the connection, whatever the, we can say the connection statement that is available, that must be enclosed within the curly braces. Now this is the one example of the JDBC code. So this is the prepared statement, that is the STMT, that is a cone.prepare statement inserted into the instructor value. So what is the where is the definition of the SPMT, or what is the where is the value of the create panel statement? This is the program that is given, that is a cone.prepare statement. Now what are the prepared statement that is available? So we can create a prepared statement in which some values are replaced by some. So if I want to replace some value, then we create the prepared statement. So that is a we can say the prepared statement is the valid statement or the final statement that is available, in which the some values are replaced by a question mark, thereby specifying that actual values will be provided later. A database system compiles the query when it is prepared. Every time the query is executed, the database system can reuse the previously complicated form of the query and apply a new row. And the code fragment that is using the prepared statement can be used. So in this one, there is a prepared statement that is used, that is the cone.prepare statement that is inserted into the instructor values, and there is a question mark, that is some values are available in this, that is there must be a, we can say the ID, there must be a name, but now till now or at this time this is question mark, that is we can feed the data, we can give the data after some time. That is done by the prepare statement. The prepare statement of the connection class submits a query statement for the compilation. It returns an object of the class prepared statement. At this time, no SQL statement has been executed. The execute query and the execute update method of prepared statement class to do that. So there are two methods, there are two, we can say the criteria that is used. One is the execute query, one is the execute update method that is used with the prepare statement, that is used to do the or that is used to match the SQL statement with the database connectivity. But before they can be invoked, we must use methods of the class prepared statement that assigns the value for the question mark parameter. So we have to use the prepared statement so that the value can be given to the different parameters. In our example, we prepare an insert statement that sets the question mark parameters, that then invoke execute update. The final two lines of our example shows that the parameter assignment remains unchanged until we specifically reassign them, or we can say that the reassign them. Therefore, the final statement that involves the SQL or execute update that inserts the tuple, and there are multiple values like 88875, then Perry, then finance, then the 12500. So these are the multiple fields that is available. We can fill the data. These are the various examples that is used. Now next is the callable statements that is also provided by the JDBC. The JDBC also provides a Calibri, or we can say the Calibre statement, that interface that allows the invocation of SQL stored procedures and the functions. That is how to use the SQL stored procedures, or how to invoke the SQL stored procedures and the functions. These plays the important role for the functions and the procedures as the prepare statement for the query. So how to use the prepare statement, or how to use the stored culture in the functions. So one is the caliber statement, so that is a keyword. Then there is a gauge, that is the stmt, that is a one, that is a variable name, that is equals to the con dot prepare call. So whatever the values, whatever the call that is prepared, that is done by the prepare call. And what is the question mark? That question mark equals to call some function, that is a what is the name of the function, or use some function that is available with the callable statement. In the same way, there is the callable cstmt2, that is a con dot prepare call that calls some other procedure, that is a question mark that is given. And the data type of the function returns values, and out parameters of procedure must be registered using the method register out parameter, and can be retrieved using the get method that is similar to those for the result set. So see a Java database connectivity manual for more information. Then the next is metadata feature, that is what is the use of the metadata features and how we are using the metadata features. So a Java application program can also use or does not include the declaration for the data stored in the database. These declarations are the part of the SQL DDL statement. So whatever the application program that includes the declaration, so there is a Java application program that does not include declaration for the data stored in the database. Those declarations are a part of the SQL DDL statement. Therefore, any Java program that uses the JDBC must either have assumptions about the database schema that is hard-coded into the program, or determine that information directly from the database system at runtime. The latter approach is usually preferable since it makes the application program more robust to change in the database schema. Now, there are two statements that is used, that is the execute query method and the execute set method. So there is two queries, that is the execute query method and the result set object. The Java program or the Java code segment that is used below uses JDBC to print out the names and the types of all the columns of a result set. That is how to print the columns, and the variable that is rs is in the code below is assumed to refers to a result set instance that is available, that is obtained by executing a query. So whenever we execute a query, rs method or a variable that is rs is used for the we can say the relation schema, that is used for the relation schema. Now, what are the various other features that is also provided? JDBC also provided other features, that is a additional feature that is available, such as updatable result set. So what is the updatable result set? That is how to update the values, or how to we can say the make the queries that is available. That is the updatable result sets. It can create an updatable result set from a query that performs a function that gives the function, or that performs a selection or uses a projection on a database relation. So whatever the query that performs a selection, that performs a projection on the database relation, that is provided. Also we can say there is an additional feature that is provided, that is the updatable results set, that the results are always updatable, that is up to date with the results. An update to a tuple in the result set then results in an update to the corresponding tuple of the database relation. By default, each SQL statement that is treated as a separate transaction that is committed automatically. So by default, every SQL statement that is used as a, we can say that is used as an individual part, but they can also be used they can also be used as a separate statement that is committed automatically. So whatever the query, the method that is used, that is a set auto commit in the JDBC connection interface, allow this behavior to be turned on the off. So whenever we use the set auto commit, that is the auto commit will be available, or automatically committed will be available. Now next is the ODBC. So we have finished with the JDBC, next is the ODBC. So let's take a break right now, then moves to the next topic, that is the ODBC after the break. So let's take a break, then moves to the ODBC. So come back from the break. Now let's start the session again. So now let's start with the next concept, that is the ODBC. So now let's start with how to, or what is the ODBC, or what is the concept of the ODBC, right? So let's start with the ODBC. So that is the open database connectivity, that is the ODBC. So we have covered with the JDBC, that is the Java database connectivity, that is used with the Java programming language. Next is the ODBC, that is the open database connectivity, that is used with the C, C++, COBOL, that is a different programming language. So this defines an API that applications can use or can be able to open a connection with the database, send the queries, updates, and get back the results. So ODBC defines a standard API, that is the application programming interface, that applications can use to open a connection. So if any application that want to open any connection, that will be maintained or that will be done by the ODBC, that is the open database connectivity. After opening a connection, they can send the queries, they can update the information, and they can get back the results. Applications such as graphical user interface, statistics, pack user interface that can be used, package, and the spreadsheet can also be a same of the ODBC. So if I want to connect with the spreadsheet with the database, that is also done with the ODBC API to connect any database server that supports the ODBC. So JDBC is generally used or mostly used with the Java programming language, because as the name advises, Java database connectivity. But when we talk about the ODBC, that is open database connectivity, that is common to each and everyone or open to each and everyone, so anyone can use or any application can use. There is no hard and fast rule that the C or the C++ programming language only use. No, and any programming language, any application that can use the ODBC, that is the open database connectivity. Every or the each database system supporting ODBC provides a library that must be linked with the client system. So every database system that is supporting the ODBC also provides a library that must be linked with the client program. When a client programs makes an ODBC API call, the code in the library system or the library communicate with that the server or to carry out the required or requested action. So when the client programs makes an ODBC API call, then the code that is used in the library communicate with the server to carry out the required action, that is what is the required action and how to use the result and how to fetch the results. Figure 5.4 shows an example of C code using the ODBC API. So this is figure 5.4. This is the example of the C programming that is using the ODBC. So it starts with the void main, that is a void ODBC example. Then there is a RET code, that is a retrieving the code, that is the error. Then the HENV, that is environment, and the HDBC, that is a database connection. So one is used for the environment, that is a variable, that is a ENV is used. Then for the connection, a new variable is used, that is a CONN. Then SQL alloc environment. Then SQL alloc connection, not alloc, this is alloc connection, that is allocating the connection. Then SQL connect, this is the main line that is connecting the SQL, that is done with the ODBC, that is the SQL connect con, that is maintaining the connection. What is the name? That is a db.el.edu. Then SQL, then NTS, that is the SQL NTS is used. Then AVI, that is the AVI code. Then SQL NTS, AVI password, and the SQL NTS. So the how the connection will be maintained, that will be maintained by this line. Then after this, there is a curly braces, that is a block of the code, or we can say the block of this SQL connection, that is a char department name 80, then float salary, then int len out 1, in len out 2, then st or hst empty, then stmt, then char pointer SQL query, that is what is the SQL query that is used, that is select department name some salary from the instructor, that is grouped by the department name. Then SQL alloc stmt, then what is the error that is given. So the main target is that main role is that we have to use the ODBC connection, that is the SQL connection, that is done by the ODBC, that is provided by the this line, that is the SQL connect, then the con, then db.while.edu, then SQL NTS AVI. Every database system that is supporting the ODBC provides a library that must be linked with the client program. So any database that is supporting or that is connecting with the ODBC also provides a library or also have a library that must be linked with the client program. When the client programs makes an ODBC API call, so when the client programs generates or makes an ODBC program API call, The code in the library communicate with the server. So every code that is available that communicate with the server to carry out the required action and the fetches the result. And the figure 5.4 shows the ODBC output, or we can say the ODBC connection. The first step in using the ODBC is to communicate with the server to set up a connection with the server. To do so, the program first allocate an SQL environment. So this is the definition of the program. So first of all, it creates an SQL environment in the database connection handle. Then ODBC defines the types, that is the H environment, HDBC and the data at core. The program that opens the database connection by using the SQL connect. This code takes several parameters. So what is the parameter that is used by the program that is taking the SQL connect, that including the connection handle, the server to which to connect, the user identifier and the password for the database. The constant, that is the SQL NTS denotes that the previous argument is null terminated arguments. So whatever the constant that is used, that is the SQL NTSC, that denote that the previous argument that is available is a null terminated string. So there is no we can say there is no outcome, there is no text that is available in the string, that is a null terminated string. So once the connection is set up, the program can send the SQL commands to the database by using the SQL execute direct. C language's variable can be found or can be bound to attributes of the query result, so that when a result tuple is fetched using the SQL fetch, its attribute values are stored in a corresponding C variables. The SQL bind call function does this task. The second argument identifies the position of the attribute in the query or result, and the third argument indicates the type conversion. So that's the explanation of the code, that is how the code will be used and how these codes are compatible with each other. And for the variable length type like character array, the last two arguments give the maximum length of the variable and the location where the actual length is to be stored when a tuple is fetched. A negative value returned for the length variable or length field indicates that the value is null. For the fixed length, such as the integer, the maximum length that is ignored, while a negative value returned for the length field indicates a null value. And the SQL fetch statement, that is in a while loop, that is executed until the SQL fetch returns a variable, that is SQL success. So this is the while loop that is used. So this is given, that is the if statement, that if it error equals to SQL success, so do all the tasks that will be used. Then ODBC also defines a function for variety of tasks, such as finding all the relations in the database and finding the names and the types of columns of a query result or a relation in the database. By default, each SQL statement is treated as a separate transaction that is committed automatically. The SQL set connection or set connect option that is available, that turn off automatic commit on the connection cone, and the transaction must then be committed explicitly by SQL transaction, that is, this is a statement, or rollback by the SQL transact, this is the rollback statement. The ODBC standard defines conformance level which specifies subsets of the functionality defined by the standard. An ODBC implementation may also provide the core level features and also provide the advanced level features, that is for the fetching the result, for the catalogs, what are the various relations, what are the various attributes that is available. And this is one part, that is the ADO.NET, that is also a API that is designed for the Visual Basic. So whenever we use the Visual Basic or whenever we use the Visual Basic programming language, so we use the ADO.NET for the connectivity. Visual Basic.NET and the C# languages. So this is a language that is used with the Visual Basic.NET and the C# languages, that provides a function to access the data which at a high level are not dissimilar to the JDBC functions, although details are different. Like JDBC and the ODBC, the ADO.NET API also allows access to result of the SQL queries as well as to the metadata. So whenever we use the ADO.NET, it is just like a JDBC and the ODBC that allows to the result of the SQL statement. A database that supports the ODBC can be accessed using the ADO.NET API, and the ADO.NET calls are translated into the ODBC calls. The ADO.NET API can also be used with some kinds of non-relational data sources such as Microsoft OLEDB, XML, and more recently entity framework that is developed by the Microsoft. And there is a SQL standard that defines a call level interface, that is a CLI, that is similar to the ODBC interface. The next is the embedded SQL, that is the next part. So the SQL standard defines embedding of SQL in a variety of programming languages such as C, C++, COBOL, Pascal, Java, PLLI, Fortran. So language in which the SQL queries are interrelated, or we can say a language in which the SQL query that is embedded is refers to a host language, and the SQL structure permitted in the host language constitutes the embedded SQL. So whenever I want to merge the SQL queries, or whenever I want to merge or permitted in the host environment, that is embedded in the host environment, that constitutes, or that is known as the embedded SQL. The program that is written in a host language can use the embedding or embedded SQL syntax to access and update the data stored in a database. An embedded SQL program must be processed by a special preprocessor prior to the compilation. So whatever the preprocessor that is given, that is given by the, that is processed by the special preprocessor that is used prior to the compilation part. The so sorry. The preprocessor replaces the embedded SQL request with the host language declaration and the procedure code that allows the runtime execution of the database access. So we are using the JDBC, we are using the embedded SQL, we are using the ODBC. This is the main distinction between the embedded SQL and the JDBC. What is the main difference? The embedded SQL program must be processed by a special preprocessor that is prior to the compilation. But in the ODBC or the JDBC, that is done after the compilation. In JDBC, SQL statements are interpreted at the runtime. So whatever the SQL statements that is interpreted at the runtime, that is at the runtime. But in embedded SQL, that is done at the before the compilation. So this says in JDBC, SQL statements are interpreted at the runtime, even if they are prepared first using the prepared statement feature. When embedded SQL is used, some SQL relation errors like data type error, logical error, syntax error may be caught at the compile time. To identify embedded SQL request to the preprocessor, we use the execute, that is the EXEC SQL statement. So for making the identification, or for making the difference in the embedded SQL, so we use the EXEC, that is the executable SQL, then embedded SQL statement. So this is executable SQL, embedded SQL statement. The exact syntax for embedded SQL request depends on the language in which SQL is embedded. So whatever the request that is available as the embedded SQL statements. In some languages such as COBOL, the semicolon is replaced with the end executable. In place of this semicolon, this must be replaced with the end and the executable. We place the statement, that is the SQL include SQL.ca in the program to identify the place where the preprocessor should insert the special variable that is used for communication between the program and the database system. That is how to make the communication between the program and the database systems. And before executing any SQL statement, the program must first count to the database. So whenever I want to count, or whenever I want to execute, so program must count or first count to the database. That is done how to count, or how to we can say program must connect to the database, that is SQL connect to the server username using password. So where as server defines the server to which a connection is to be established. Now variables of the host language can be used within the embedding SQL statements, but they can be preceded by the colon to differentiate them from the SQL variables. Variable that is used as above must be declared within the declare section. The syntax for declaring the variable. So what is the syntax for declaring the variable? That is executable SQL begin declare section int credit amount. So what is the credit amount? And the executable SQL end declare statement. So one is the begin declare statement, one is the end declare statement. Embedded SQL statements are similar in form to the regular SQL statement. So whatever the SQL statement that is available with the one form of statement that is used with the SQL statement. So to write a relational query, we use the declare cursor statement. So this is the declare section that is available. So this is executable SQL begin declare section. So this is the query that is the executable SQL, that is the exec SQL. Then declare the C cursor for. So cursor is declared for the select ID name from student where the total credit is greater than the credit amount. Variable C in the preceding expression is known as the cursor for the query. We can use this variable to identify the query, and we can use the open statement to open the query to be evaluated. The open statement for such queries or for our simple query that is as follows. So what is a simple query? That is the executable SQL open C. This statement causes the database system to execute the query and to save the results within a temporary location. So this is the same that is used. And the Java embedding of SQL, that is also known as SQLJ, that provides the same feature as the embedded SQL implementation. Now, what are the functions and the procedure that is used in the advanced SQL? That is how to use the functions and how to use the various procedure that is used with the SQL statements. So we have already seen various functions that are built into the SQL language. So there are many functions that is used with the SQL languages. So there are various built-in feature, we can say the several features, function that is available with the SQL language. In this section, we show how developers can write their own function, that is what is the use of the function, or what are the various developers that can write their own functions and the procedure, store them in the database, and then invoke them from the SQL statement. So there are several built-in functions, there are several predefined functions, there are several user-defined functions that is already available. So in this section we also studied about the developer, that is how they can write their own functions and the procedures, how they store them in the database, and how they can invoke them from the SQL statement. And the functions are particularly useful with the specialized data types such as images and the geometric objects. So whenever I want to use the geometric objects, images that can be used or that is used with the objects. For example, a line segment data type that is used in a map object may have an associated function. So that is a procedure, that is a function that is used, that I have to check the two line segment if they overlap or not. And image data type, they may have associated functions, that is compare the two images for the similarity. So these are the various examples of the functions. For example, if the two lines are passing together with each other, that is also a function, or we can also define a function for that query. And if there is an image, that is what is the main similarity between two images, and what is the main difference between two images, that is used for the similarity. That is also a function that is also done by the function that is used with the SQL statements. And the procedure and functions also allow the business logic to be stored in the database. So this is what is the procedure, what is the function that to be used, that is to be stored in the database and executed from the SQL statement. For example, universities usually have many rules about how many courses a student can take in a given semester. So if a university asks a question, that is how many students or how many rules about how many courses a student can take in a given semester. The minimum number of courses a full-time instructor must teach in a year. The maximum number of majors a student can be enrolled in. So these are the various functions, these are the various features. We can say these are the various questions that will be answered by the various procedures. So one is a procedure, one is a function. That is what procedure will be followed and which function will be used to execute the procedures. So while such business logic can be encoded as a programming language procedures that is stored entirely outside the database, defining them as the stored procedures in the database has several advantages. What are the various advantages? That allows, or it also allows a multiple application to access the procedure. It also allows a single point of change in the case the business rule change without changing other parts of the applications. And SQL also allows the definition of the functions, procedure, and the methods. So SQL also allows how to define the functions and how to define the procedures and how to define the methods. These can be defined either by the procedural component of SQL or by external programming languages such as C, C++, Java. So we can either use the procedural components of SQL only, or we can also use the external programming languages such as Java, C++, C. Although the syntax we present here is defined by the SQL statement, most databases implement non-standard versions of this statement or syntax. For example, the procedural languages that is supported by the Oracle, Microsoft SQL Server and the Postgres are different from the standard syntax that we present. So the create function department count, then returns the integer that begin, declare decount integer, then select the count that is counting the whole crux, or we can say the count the all values because the asterisk is used into the decount, and from the instructor table, and what is the main criteria, or what is the main, we can say the syntax, that is the where the instructor dot department name equals to department name, and that returns the d dot count. So this is the function, or this is how the function can be defined in the SQL. And there are some difference also that is also illustrated in the Oracle, that is also a part of the Oracle. So whenever we use the SQL there is a difference, whenever we use the Oracle there is a difference. Although parts of the syntax we present here may not be supported on such systems, the concept we describe are applicable across the implementations, although with a different syntax. Then there is the first part, that is how to declare and invoke the SQL functions and procedures. That is how to declare the SQL functions and how to declare the SQL procedure. That is what is the main difference between declaring and invoking the function. That is what is the syntax that is used for declaring the SQL functions and SQL procedure. That is how the SQL procedures can be implemented. So the first part is declaring and invoking the SQL functions and the procedures. So this is the lengthy topic, and this is the, we can say, the starting phase of this topic. So this is, I'm not going to start right now because we have covered so many topics in today's class, and this is the theoretical topic, so I'm not going to start right now. So I'm winding this class over here only. If there is any doubts, any confusions, you can ask the doubts from me, and read out carefully this chapter because this is very important chapter, that is we can say the advanced SQL. So please read out carefully. Any doubts, any confusion, you can ask from me. So that's all for today's session. Thank you so much everyone. In the next class, that is in tomorrow's class, just a minute Joseph. In the tomorrow's class, I am taking your next topic, that is the SQL functions and the procedures. Now my query is to, or my answer is to Joseph. You ask the query that you are delayed by 1 day. No issues, you can submit latest by today only. That is the last deadline. Yes Joseph. Pardon? Okay, you send the image right now. Yeah, you are asking about the assignment. You are asking Joseph, you are asking about the assignment that you have to submit today only, right? So no issues, you tomorrow at what timing? Okay, no issues, you can send it. Oh, welcome Joseph. So yes, you are downloaded the object oriented or procedure oriented? Uh, no. There are two assignments that is passed to the all of your students. That is the object oriented and the procedure oriented. So you are talking about the procedure oriented or object oriented? Yeah, only two assignments are given till now. Pardon? Okay. Okay, welcome. So that's all for today's session. Okay. So thank you so much everyone. In the next class, that in the tomorrow's class, I am taking your next topic, that is SQL functions and procedures. So that's all today's session. Thank you so much everyone. Bye bye.